preserving what's important. In Nathaniel Philbrick's 2006 history, Mayflower, of the early contact between the Puritans, the English settlers, and the local Indian nations, there's this incredible story of the Pokanoket, I may be mispronouncing their name, nation, and how the English learned how the Pokanoket preserved their culture. In part, the early English settlers knew they had to get along with their new neighbors. That would change, but early on, when they were traveling to offer gifts from their own English settlement in Plymouth to the Pokanoket settlements, Winslow, one of the early settlers, would write about how when they walked along the trail, there were these circular foot-deep holes in the ground that had been dug where, he writes, any remarkable act had occurred. And each individual in the Pokanoket Nation was responsible for telling the others of what had happened at that spot, even into deep history, so that, Winslow says, the many great things of great antiquity will be fresh in memory, so that as a man travelleth, his journey will be the less tedious by reason of the many historical discourses that will be related to him. And their sense of community this way went far into the past. And as Philbrick writes, that the entire land was a mythic land where it wasn't just space you traveled, but also you traveled through time, and that the people would never forget. They would never forget the essential stories and the essential principles of their people. And this was so important, as at this point in time, the Indian nations, even at the time of first contact, had been decimated. As many as half of their population had disappeared because European diseases had moved down from New France and from Quebec. And before these nations even saw a European, they had been affected terribly and decimated by European disease. Thank God they had a system to preserve their culture and their core values. It was woven organically in. As they moved about their days, they told the stories that were important to them. That's how culture was preserved, and that really is how culture is preserved. It's Memorial Day this weekend, and it's important to weave into our days the key stories we want to tell as a people, as Americans, as Jews. Key stories have to be told organically in our lives. You can't wait for just special moments to do it. It has to be throughout the year. It's the same in the Torah portion. This is next week the Israelites begin traveling, and they tell the story along the way. We should be blessed with the ability to tell stories and to remember how to weave organically the key ideas that we want to communicate to each other into our lives. Shabbat Shalom.